Awesome.
There we go.
Recording. Excellent. Welcome everyone. Hello, hello. How's it going? My name is Marino Wijay. I am here to, be a part of the community and serve you all. But, at my day job, I'm a platform advocate at Solo. I'm an ambassador at EddieHub, and I also I'm an organizer for this conference that's coming up called KubeHuddle. And with me today, I actually have a special guest, a very special guest in the sense that he's also Canadian because I'm Canadian, and it's just exciting to have someone within the country actually show up on the stream for the very first time. So let me welcome Rob. Rob, welcome to this. I don't even know what this is yet. We're just gonna, we're gonna do a little bit of promotion here. But Rob, take it away. Introduce yourself.
Cheers. Yeah, we'll make it up as we go. Thank you. Hi, I'm Rob. I am a trainer at Super Orbital, where I teach people to use the cloud, Kubernetes, complicated networking software. You name it, we will make your people dangerous, basically.
Awesome. Yeah, I was trying to play with the windows there and I wasn't working out too well, but that's okay.
That's
That's
cool.
fantastic. That's fantastic. So why don't you you can dive into it and I'll
Sure.
come back and share some stuff later on, but tell us a little bit about what Super Orbital does and how it came to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So primarily, we do engineering work. So people bring us their hard Kubernetes problems. We tackle them. We turn them around and send them right back to handling their customers' problems as opposed to trying to be, operations experts. Um, and in doing that, we found that there was a need for training. Basically, people would come to us and they would have sort of one senior platform person who really knew the stuff inside and out. And then they had, 30 full stack devs who just came on and are like extremely capable Rails developers or something like that. And they don't know much about manifests or they don't know much about clouds and they need to be able to debug production and things like that. And so we started offering this training to people who needed to go from sort of zero to proficient really quickly. And now it's become its own arm of our business. And so that is where I came in. I took over all the training about a year ago and I'm now got another trainer on staff and we're trying to keep up with the demand.
Awesome, awesome. So that's great. Thanks for sharing what you all do at Super Orbital. Where do you see yourself specializing in? Like, what are some of the areas that you excel in? Because and I'm bringing this up because I saw an amazing performance you put up when we went to Cloud Native Security Con, and you did an excellent job of conveying things that go wrong with both a CNI and a service mesh. And if you don't even mind, feel free to talk a little bit about what those two are. Um,
Sure.
but tell us about your specialty. Like, how did you kind of move towards that whole space?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's not a glamorous story. It's kind of a muddy one. I have been in operations SRE type roles for the last 6 or 7 years, right up until I switched into, being a trainer full time. And I so my to answer your direct question, my domain of expertise tends to be cloud networking technologies, and I wound up that way because I joined an organization that had a really healthy appetite for brand new technology. I think we've all had a job like that at some point in our careers. Um, and so I showed up and they had Istio in production in 2018 or something like that. I think maybe they even deployed it prior to me joining and I had no idea what service mesh was, and I didn't know how it worked, and it was running all of our production services. And then the person who deployed it left.
I love it.
And so I was on a very small platform team with a couple other engineers, none of whom knew how this thing worked. And we were like, oh, we got to know how this works. So I did what I do, which is I just picked it all apart and picked it all apart and picked it all apart until I understood how it worked. And then I became the Istio guy. And that carried on since then. And so I have become, um, a domain expert in other cloud networking technologies. And so I tend to get brought in on problems that involve the confluence of cloud, like container networking and service mesh. So that's how I wound up getting my first exposure to Cilium. My I shouldn't say that. Not my first exposure, but my first deep exposure to Cilium was at Superorbital. We had a client who had a complex Cilium installation. I believe now they are an enterprise customer, and they had some deep problem that happened at the layer 4, layer 7 boundary and needed somebody who could look deep into both of those and figure out what was going on. And so I got to help with that problem, and got to the bottom of it. And yeah, and so now I have all this experience that allows me to come to conferences and talk about these problems that happen. We're at the intersection of two subtle complex technologies, like, layer 4 and layer 7 networking are very distinct problem domains, and they overlap in this, where issues can creep in, specifically security issues like the ones that I spoke about in Seattle.
Ah, wow, I am muted. I can't, I do this all the time. I have a double mute setup, and so I mute my actual mic when I'm not speaking so there's no feedback coming in your way. But anyways, I was just saying it was fascinating to see how you delivered, those perspectives because some of those particular nuances, for example, pod IPs being released and then, being reconsumed again almost immediately without any sort of, back off timer or anything like that is something that no one really thinks about too often, right? But has that potential to become such a flaw, such an exploit in your own environment. So I'm glad you shared a lot of light around that. And then the other element around identity was also very fascinating too, which it really makes me want to go dig a little bit deeper into how Istio handles identity from a different perspective and how tools like Spire and Spiffy really come into play and help with that too. So I'm interested to know, like, in terms of your perspective of the world of, and I might be like doing this just because I really want to know your perspective. Do you think the sidecar is always going to be there?
Good question. Probably. I think there are always going to be use cases where you need a sidecar, um, specifically because, and again, this to do with identity. It provides the strongest guarantee that the traffic passing through the sidecar is the traffic that originated from the client application. If you have a model like um, ambient, like uh, the Cilium layer 7, where you have one proxy per worker node as opposed to one proxy per application, um, you just have a harder time establishing that guarantee. And it's not that one is superior to the other. It's what level of isolation is appropriate for your workload, right? It's the same as deciding whether you should put your application into a container or a VM or on bare metal. What level of isolation is appropriate for your needs? And so I think there will always be a level of isolation that requires a sidecar for certain workloads.
Oh, I love that answer. Fantastic answer. Um, I love that perspective because when you think about what's been going on in the industry over the last year or so, there has been this push and pull, sidecar or no sidecar, right? And you see the systems out there, the tooling out there that has evolved to accommodate for the different styles of workload. Like you just mentioned, ambient mesh is a perfect example of that. But you also start to see that there's a repetition of the networking space all over again. This is my perspective. I'm seeing a repetition of how we're taking a network switch and then turning it into a full stack networking Swiss Army knife. And then we're doing the same thing with the service mesh, just climbing down the stack this time. So it's quite fascinating to see these trends going on. And I think at some point, all of these technologies will converge and there probably will be one winner. I don't know who, maybe a couple of them. We'll see. But
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that perspective. I'm going to quickly talk about KubeHuddle because I want to talk about the fact that, Toronto has not had a solid community conference in a long time, right?
Yes.
And, I was hoping that KCD would happen, last year, or maybe even this year, but there aren't any sort of solid plans. And KCDs take a bit of time to plan. You need, you need some oversight from the CNCF. And, you know, I, I'll be honest, I'm not always patient for those kinds of things. So, I was following David Flanagan, Raw Code, if you know who that is.
Yeah.
And he came up with this idea to run a conference in Edinburgh last October. So I submitted a talk, got accepted, went all the way out there, delivered it. But more than anything, I loved the vibe of KubeHuddle. And I asked him after the conference, like, what would it take to bring this out to Toronto? And he's like, I will support you, whatever you want to do, make it happen. And so it only became real when I showed up to the MTCC, probably back in, I think it was late December or mid December or something. And I'm like, hey, I want to come by and take a look. I saw the place. The layout was perfect for what we needed for about a 300 to 400 person community conference. And then a week later, I put down a deposit, and I'm like, shit, I'm not getting this back. So it just became real, and I started to realize, we needed to get this going, and we're well into planning. We've got our CFP that's opened up for one more week now. So if you haven't got your CFP in, please get it in. It closes March 3rd at 11:59 EST. So, whatever it is, whatever the talk is about, if it's around DevOps, Kubernetes, platform engineering, networking and DevOps, whatever it is, go to kubehuddle.com and take a look and see. And tickets are still for sale. So, you're welcome to purchase them if you just don't want to talk and you just want to attend. At the same time, I also, want to extend a very large, massive thank you out to Super Orbital, because you are one of our very first sponsors, our logistics and community sponsors. And I love that. I love that, you came out to us and you said, look, we want to be a part of this. And you specifically said, like, you wanted to make sure that folks knew that they knew where to go when they wanted to learn more about Kubernetes or even Service Mesh. And so you're going to have that strong presence at KubeHuddle Toronto, and I'm really excited about that. So, what do you plan on doing when you're at KubeHuddle? Is there anything that you'd like to do?
Yeah. So I have recently relocated back to Ontario. I was living in British Columbia for a while. I was living in the United States for a while. And where I was living previously, there were pretty active developer communities available. You could go and talk with node people if you wanted to. You could go and talk with blockchain people if you wanted to. You could go and talk to operations cloud people if you wanted to. But there hadn't been prior to KubeHuddle. I hadn't seen a lot of action in the GTA Southern Ontario area, which was surprising given how much tech there is around here. So my plan is to just go shake as many hands as possible, meet as many people as possible, and find out what people are doing, what cool stuff is happening. Um, I think like I got a lot of value out of those interactions while I was living in those other places, and I intend to capitalize on that as much as I can at KubeHuddle. And also, I will be submitting a talk proposal for something new I have never spoken about before. So I'm hoping that that goes over well.
Fantastic. That is so awesome. I'm just gonna quickly share y'all's website so that if anyone is interested to learn a little bit more about what Super Orbital does, go to the website over there, and you can find out all the magic that Rob drops whenever he shows up. So, thank you so much for sharing that, Rob. I have one last question for you, right? If you could go back in time to 5 years, what would you be doing? What would you do differently?
If I could change something that I was doing 5 years ago, career-wise or anything.
Anything.
Oh, what is it? So that would be 2018. 2018, I moved to the United States into a slightly fraught political environment, and I had no idea that quarantine was coming. And I met a ton of cool people at a really cool startup. I made a ton of awesome friends. And in that situation, after quarantine came down, I learned that actually what I needed most in my life was to move right back here to Southern Ontario to be really close to my friends and family, the people who mean the most to me. And if I hadn't had that experience, if I hadn't been quarantined in a foreign country and very lonesome, it wouldn't have happened. So I wouldn't change anything. I would do it exactly the same way.
I love it. I love it. You know what? You never expect the answer of let's just keep things as expected, right? We'll keep things the same path and whatnot. So I love it. Thank you so much, Rob. I really appreciate you showing up today and sharing a lot of your thoughts around what you do at Super Orbital, and I'm excited to have you all at KubeHuddle. So looking forward to it. Thank you for your time, man. I hope you have an excellent weekend. We'll see you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Marino. Ciao.
Bye.